The automatic doors of Walmart slid open, and a blast of refrigerated air hit me, a chilling welcome for a man with a heavy heart. My grocery list, a crumpled piece of paper in my hand, felt like a symbol of my life lately. A list of needs I barely had the means to meet: milk, eggs, bread. 3 simple things that felt like the entire weight of my jobless existence. I took a deep breath, pushing the despair aside, and stepped into the artificial glow of the store. The fluorescent lights hummed a familiar, lonely tune. It was late, and the store was mostly empty, save for a few employees restocking shelves. I headed straight for the grocery section, hoping to get in and out as quickly as possible. The aisles were clean, the products neatly arranged, but a strange feeling settled over me. It was like I was walking through a museum of things I couldn't afford anymore. I found the milk and eggs easily enough, but when I reached for the bread, something caught my eye. On several of the plastic-wrapped loaves, a faint symbol was drawn in what looked like a black marker. It was a simple circle with a single arrow pointing inward. I dismissed it at first, thinking it was just a kid's doodle, but as I moved down the aisle, I saw the same symbol on more and more packages. My curiosity was piqued, and I grabbed a loaf to get a closer look. I moved on to the shampoo aisle, following my list. To my surprise, the same symbol was on the cap of a bottle. My blood ran cold. This wasn't a coincidence. It was intentional. I scanned the aisle, my heart pounding, looking for any sign of who might be doing this. The only person I saw was an employee who was giving me a strange, knowing look. It was a silent accusation, as if he knew what I had found. Returning to the grocery aisle, I found a small note tucked beside a carton of eggs I had put back earlier. The same circle and arrow symbol was at the top, followed by a chilling message. From the moment you saw the first sign, you became one of us. The rules are simple, but the penalty for losing is terrifying. A cold sweat broke out across my forehead. This was no prank. It was a calculated trap, and I had already stepped into it. A wave of questions flooded my mind. Who were they? Why me? I grabbed the note and my few groceries and rushed to the checkout, desperate to escape. At the register, the cashier, a woman with a surprisingly warm smile, asked, "Find everything you were looking for?" I couldn't bring myself to speak. I just nodded, paid for my items, and fumbled for my receipt. When she handed it to me, I saw the same symbol, drawn in pen at the bottom. The message was clear. I was in their game now. I stumbled out of the store and ran to my car. As I reached for the door handle, I saw a small sticker on my windshield. It had the same symbol and a new message. If you choose to play, the next sign is waiting near your home. My mind reeled. This wasn't just a game in a store. It was following me, invading my personal space. The fear I had felt about my job and finances was nothing compared to this. I was caught in a horrifying web, and I had no idea who the spiders were or what they wanted. I just knew that my life, which I thought was already at rock bottom, was about to get a whole lot worse. My car, a clattering old Ford, felt like the only safe space left in the world. I drove home, my knuckles white as I gripped the steering wheel, my mind replaying the bizarre events at Walmart. I parked in my usual spot and stumbled out of the car, my heart a drum in my chest. I rushed to my apartment, locking the door behind me with a decisive click, as if a simple lock could keep the bizarre new reality at bay. But the game had already found me. My laptop, which I had left closed on the kitchen table, was glowing. I hadn't plugged it in or touched it. The screen displayed a single, unnerving message. The next phase of the game has begun. Your next clue is hidden in your fondest memory. My fondest memory. My mind immediately went to my late father, a man whose gentle hands had taught me how to play guitar. The guitar itself was a symbol of everything that was good and pure in my life. It was a beacon of a time before the endless struggle, before the gnawing loneliness of a life without purpose. The guitar was tucked away in a drawer in my bedroom, a relic of a happier time. I opened the drawer, my hands trembling. Beneath the soft cloth I used to protect the guitar, there was a small note. It was the same familiar symbol, and a new message. We are waiting. The final clue is hidden where you last sought comfort. My heart sank. The last place I sought comfort? That was the Walmart itself. It was where I had gone to escape the suffocating silence of my apartment, to be around other people, to feel for a moment like I was part of the normal world again. The note must have been referring to the bread I had bought. I ran back to the kitchen, ripped open the plastic bag, and sure enough, there was a small slip of paper tucked under the loaf. It had a single address, 1076 Bentonville, Arkansas, the address of Walmart's headquarters. My mind raced. This was no prank. This was a direct invitation to the heart of the beast. They weren't just playing a game. They were a full-blown organization. I grabbed my phone to call a cab, but the moment I entered the address, my phone's screen froze, then went black. The message was clear. They wanted me to go there, but on their terms. I had no choice. I put on my jacket and walked out into the cold night. The streets were eerily quiet. There were no taxis, no Ubers, nothing. It was as if the world had gone to sleep and I was the only one left awake. I walked for what felt like hours, my mind a storm of fear and confusion. I finally found the address. It was an old, nondescript office building, its paint peeling and its windows dark. I cautiously pushed the door open and stepped inside. The air was stale, and the only light came from a single, flickering bulb down the hall. I followed the light to a large room where a group of people were sitting around a table. They were all wearing the same white masks with the familiar circle and arrow symbol. One of them, whose mask had a black circle, stood up. "Welcome, Jake," he said, his voice a disembodied echo in the vast room. "We've been waiting for you." I swallowed hard. "Who are you?" "We are the Discount Covenant," he said. "We are the ones who were broken by this system. We are the ones who are fighting back, and now you are one of us." "I don't want to be one of you," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "You don't have a choice," he replied, a cruel smile visible through the mask. "You are already a player in our game. You either join us, or you become part of the system forever. It's time to choose." My heart hammered against my ribs as I looked at the masked figures before me. Their eyes, or at least what I could see of them through the masks, were unnervingly empty, devoid of any warmth or human emotion. They had been broken by the system, and now they were breaking others to fill the void. "What do you want from me?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. The one in the black-circled mask stepped forward. "We want you to join us. You have the same fire, the same anger. You understand the injustice of it all." He gestured toward the other masked figures. "We're all here because of them. Because of the endless pursuit of profit, the disregard for human dignity." I looked from one figure to the next. The store manager who had fired me was probably one of them. The coworker who had reported me to management for a small mistake, another. It was a sick kind of a reunion, a gathering of the broken. But a part of me knew that this wasn't the way. "I'm not like you," I said, a newfound strength in my voice. "You're not fighting the system. You've become a part of it." He laughed, a hollow, bitter sound. "We've created our own system, Jake. A system of justice. A system of vengeance. And you will be a part of it." He held out a small metallic pin, the same circle and arrow symbol etched into its surface. "Pin this to your shirt. It's your new uniform. You belong to us now." I recoiled from the pin. "I'm not doing it. I'm not playing your game anymore." His laugh stopped abruptly. The silence that followed was heavy and final. "Then you have lost," he said, and the other masked figures began to close in around me. "And there is no escape for those who lose." They pushed me into a small, dark room. The door slammed shut, and I was plunged into a suffocating blackness. A single computer screen flickered to life, the monitor glowing with an eerie light. The screen was filled with code, but as I watched, the lines of code began to shift and change, forming into images. Images of my life, my failures, my missed opportunities. It was an assault on my mind, a psychological torture. They were showing me the very things they claimed to be saving me from. The things that had brought me to my knees. I closed my eyes, trying to block out the images, but they were still there, playing on the inside of my eyelids. I heard their voices too, whispers of my deepest fears and insecurities. "You're a loser, Jake. You'll never get a good job again. You'll die alone." I had to fight back. I had to reject their twisted version of reality. I wasn't going to let them win. I wasn't going to let them break me. I took a deep breath and focused, pushing back against the torrent of negativity. "I'm not a loser," I whispered. "I'm a fighter." Suddenly, the images on the screen flickered and faded. The voices in my head fell silent. I opened my eyes and looked at the screen. The code was still there, but it was no longer a reflection of my fears. It was just code, and I knew then that I had won. But the game wasn't over yet. The masked figures were still waiting for me, and I had to face them one last time. I stepped out of the room, leaving the screen and its mind games behind me. The masked figures stared, a palpable confusion rippling through their ranks. The black masked leader, however, remained resolute. "You may have won that round, but you will not escape the ultimate price." He lunged at me, his hand outstretched, holding a small blade. I stood my ground. "This isn't the answer," I said, my voice calm despite the adrenaline coursing through me. "You're not fighting the system. You've become a part of its sickness. You're just as much a product of its greed as the people you claim to be saving." My words hit him like a physical blow. He froze, the knife inches from my face. One of the other masked figures, a woman, stepped forward and pulled off her mask. I recognized her instantly. The cashier from Walmart. Her eyes were filled with tears. "He's right," she said, her voice trembling. "We became the very thing we swore to destroy." One by one, the others followed suit, their masks falling to the floor. Their faces were a mosaic of despair and disillusionment. They were former managers, cashiers, stalkers, all of them broken by a company that had taken everything from them. The black masked leader, now exposed, was a man in his late 50s with a tired, haggard face. He looked at me, then at his fellow Covenant members, and finally dropped the knife. "We thought we were fighting for something," he said, his voice a broken whisper. "But we were just trying to fill the hole they left in us." Suddenly, the building began to shake. The walls cracked, and the flickering lights went out, plunging us into darkness. I felt a pulling sensation, a warping of reality. We were no longer in the building in Bentonville. We were back in Walmart. The sun was rising, its light streaming through the massive glass front, illuminating a scene of utter chaos. Aisles were overturned, products were strewn everywhere, and the store looked as though a tornado had ripped through it. We stood there, a group of former enemies, stunned by the revelation. The game was over, and it had been a psychological one all along. The chaos wasn't real. It was a reflection of the turmoil within us. As I walked out of the store, the morning air felt cleaner, the sun brighter. The pin was gone, and so was the fear. The game had not given me a job or my savings back, but it had given me something far more valuable, a new perspective. I had come to Walmart seeking a bargain on groceries, but I had found something else, a glimpse into the dark side of a system that chews people up and spits them out. I had seen the despair, the anger, and the desperation that fueled the so-called discount covenant. My story ends here, but I know their game continues. Somewhere out there, another broken person is about to walk through a Walmart's doors, unaware of the twisted game that awaits them. The discount covenant will be waiting, and the next chapter of this dark story will begin. The night shift at Walmart began promptly at 11. As the last of the daytime shoppers trickled out, the cavernous store transformed. The cacophony of shopping carts, chattering families, and blaring advertisements dissolved into an eerie, almost sacred silence. My name is Dave. Just a year ago, I was a project manager at a reputable engineering firm. Now my nights were spent meticulously restocking shelves, sweeping forgotten aisles, and prepping the vast space for the next morning's consumer rush. I wasn't alone in this nocturnal existence. There were others, each bearing the invisible scars of profound personal failure. For us, this Walmart wasn't merely a workplace, it was a sanctuary. Our small, motley crew consisted of 3 others besides myself. There was Jen, a former high school teacher. Her eyes often held a melancholic depth, reflecting a silent grief. She'd lost her teaching position under circumstances she never fully explained and now operated a cash register, her movements precise but joyless. Then there was Mario, a former musician. His once vibrant dream of becoming a rock star had shattered, leaving him to wield a mop and bucket as a floor cleaner. The rhythmic swish of his mop often sounded to me like a mournful, unspoken melody. And finally, there was Sam. His past remained an enigma. He rarely spoke, performing his duties with a quiet, almost robotic efficiency. His gaze held a peculiar emptiness, as if he were a ghost inhabiting a living body. We were all castaways from the brighter, bustling world outside. Each of us carried the heavy burden of failure, and each of us felt a profound sense of isolation. The vast, impersonal expanse of Walmart became our refuge, a place where our pasts didn't matter, where we were judged only by our ability to keep the shelves stocked and the floors clean. It was in this shared understanding of broken dreams that our bond formed. Around 2 a.m, after our manager had inevitably retired to his office for a nap, we would converge in a secluded corner of the store, usually behind the seasonal decorations aisle. Here, amidst the festive, unbought relics of holidays past, we conducted our own impromptu therapy sessions. We'd share snippets of our shattered lives, laying bare the wounds that had driven us into the shadows of the night shift. One night, Jen, with a sigh that seemed to carry the weight of years, began to speak of her past. She had been a dedicated teacher, deeply invested in her students' futures. One particular student, whom she had mentored diligently, had gone on to a prestigious college only to tragically take his own life shortly after. Jen, in her quiet despair, bore the crushing weight of responsibility, believing she had somehow failed him. She never returned to the classroom. Mario, in his turn, recounted his band's rise and fall. They had secured a coveted spot at a major music festival, a chance to finally live their dream. But on the day of the show, his beloved guitar, his voice, had been stolen. The incident had broken something inside him, and he hadn't touched a guitar since, his once fiery spirit now reduced to the methodical movements of a cleaner. Then it was my turn. I spoke of the catastrophic engineering project, a miscalculation that had cost my firm millions and my career everything. The termination had been swift and merciless, stripping me of my savings, my reputation, and my family's respect. I had tried, fruitlessly, to rebuild, but the weight of that failure had pinned me down, leaving me nowhere to go but here, to the endless aisles of Walmart. We listened to each other's stories, a silent symphony of shared pain. It was a profound solace to know we weren't alone in our wreckage. This Walmart, with its bland comfort and anonymity, had become our sanctuary, a place where our pasts couldn't find us, where our failures couldn't haunt us as fiercely. Here, our identities were reduced to a single unifying label: the night crew. One night, amidst the usual hushed confessions, Sam, to our utter astonishment, finally spoke. His voice was gravelly, unused, yet imbued with an unsettling conviction. "You know," he murmured, his gaze sweeping over the towering shelves, "this Walmart, it's a kind of heaven for us. No one judges us here. There's nothing for us out there." His words struck us like a physical blow. Sam, the silent enigma, had articulated the unspoken fear that bound us all. His raw honesty ripped through our carefully constructed facade of acceptance, exposing the deeper truth. We were terrified of the outside world, terrified of facing our failures head-on. That night, a silent, unspoken pact was made. We would remain within the safe, predictable confines of this Walmart, because out there there was nothing for us. We were blind to the insidious truth that this very sanctuary was, in fact, an invisible prison, its walls constructed brick by brick from our collective fears. We were losing ourselves, one by one, to its comforting embrace, unaware that one of us had already disappeared, not from the store itself, but deeper within its labyrinthine depths. Sam's words hung in the air long after he had finished speaking, a ghostly echo in the vast, quiet space. For the next few nights, our therapy sessions in the back corner of the store ceased. An uneasy silence settled between us. Sam's raw honesty had cracked our carefully constructed sanctuary, exposing the fear we all shared, the crippling terror of facing the world outside. The Walmart, once our haven, had become a prison, its invisible walls built from the bricks of our own fear and self-loathing. The true chilling reality of our situation became undeniable when our manager, his face pale with concern, called us into his office. "Has anyone seen Sam?" he asked, his voice shaking. We all shook our heads, a wave of cold dread washing over us. Sam had been on shift the night before, a silent, spectral presence as always. But when the clock had struck 6 a.m., he was simply gone. His personal belongings, his backpack, everything was still in his locker. The police were called, but their investigation was brief and fruitless. The security footage showed Sam going about his work, moving from aisle to aisle, before he simply vanished from the frame, never to return. The authorities chalked it up to a typical disappearance, a man who had decided to walk away from his life. But we knew better. We knew Sam had made a choice, a terrifying, irreversible choice to disappear. The terror of Sam's vanishing act settled over us like a shroud. We now understood that he had willingly chosen to hide, to remove himself from the world, and the idea that he might be hidden somewhere within the vast, sterile expanse of the Walmart was a truly chilling thought. One night I saw Jen at her register, her eyes swollen and red. "Are you okay?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. She shook her head, tears finally falling. "I'm not okay, Dave. I'm terrified. This place, it's a trap. It's a cage. Sam saw it before we did. There's no life for us out there, but there's no escape from here either." Her words were a mirror of my own thoughts. We had sought a haven in this store, but we had only found a more comfortable kind of confinement. Sam, in his own way, had shown us the ultimate act of surrender. Later that night, as I walked the empty aisles, a deep sense of unease settled over me. I returned to our usual therapy spot and saw a crumpled note on the floor. It was in Sam's handwriting. "You are all wrong. There is no life outside this store. Everything out there is a lie, a performance. We are the only real ones. I have found my sanctuary here." My heart pounded. He was still here. I rushed to find Jen and Mario, and we read the note together, the words burning with a terrifying conviction. Mario, his voice a desperate whisper, said, "We have to find him." We split up, searching every hidden corner of the store, the dusty back rooms, the cramped storage closets, the forgotten corridors, but there was no sign of him. When we finally gave up, exhausted and demoralized, Mario shared a memory from his past. "When I was a kid," he said, his voice raw with emotion, "I had a toy guitar. I loved it more than anything in the world, but one day it broke. I couldn't bear to throw it away. I hid it in an old box in my mom's room, believing that one day I would find it and it would be whole again." His words sent a chill down my spine. Sam hadn't just disappeared. He had hidden himself away, a broken thing, in the last place he felt he could find refuge. He saw this Walmart as the box where he could hide his brokenness, believing that here, the pain of his failure would finally fade away. But his note was a warning, a desperate cry from within the prison he had built for himself. We were all on the same path, slowly, surely, becoming ghosts within this vast, soulless space. Sam's cryptic note became a haunting refrain in our minds. It was no longer just about a missing colleague. It was about the chilling implications of his choice, a choice that echoed our own unspoken fears. Jen, Mario, and I redoubled our efforts to find him during our night shifts, transforming our mundane tasks into a desperate search. We scoured every neglected corner of the store, the cavernous, dusty back rooms, the cramped storage closets behind the break room, even the rarely accessed corridors that had been sealed off for years, now rediscovered in our grim quest. One particularly eerie night, Mario, usually absorbed in his melancholic mopping, stumbled upon something in the derelict music section, a forgotten relic from a time when Walmart still sold CDs and vinyl. He called Jen and me over, his voice a strained whisper. The area was thick with dust, years of neglect having transformed it into an archaeological site of forgotten pop culture. From a stacked box of scratched records, Mario pulled out a small, antiquated music box. It looked like it had been discarded for decades. He wound the tiny mechanism, and a fragile, tinny melody, broken and warped by time, began to play. Tears welled in Mario's eyes. "This tune," he choked out. "Sam loved this tune. He used to hum it all the time." Mario handed me the music box. I turned it over in my hands, and there, barely visible on its tarnished metal bottom, was a small handwritten note. It was Sam's unmistakable script. "The mistakes chase us. Walmart is where we hide from them." Below the message, a series of faded numbers pointed to a specific bay and shelf number within one of Walmart's vast, impersonal warehouses, a storage unit buried deep within the store's belly. Our hearts pounded with a mixture of terror and grim determination. We knew this was it. We hurried towards the designated warehouse, its cold, echoing expanse seeming to stretch on forever. The air grew heavy, thick with the smell of cardboard and forgotten dreams. At the very end of the warehouse, tucked away behind towering stacks of unsold merchandise, we found a small, unmarked wooden door. It creaked open with a groan that echoed through the silence. Inside, the scene was unsettling. In a small, dimly lit space, Sam sat huddled in a corner. Around him lay a scattered mess of paper scraps, hundreds of them, each inscribed with the same two stark words: "I failed." Sam looked up, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear, despair, and a profound emptiness that chilled us to the bone. "Sam, why are you here?" Jen pleaded, her voice cracking. "Why are you hiding yourself away like this?" Sam didn't answer with words. He simply extended a trembling hand, holding out a single ancient newspaper clipping. The paper was yellowed and brittle, its edges frayed. The headline screamed, "Prominent businessman takes own life, leaves behind mountain of debt." Below the headline, a faded photograph depicted a smiling family. Sam's parents, radiant with hope, and a much younger Sam, his face innocent, yet already bearing a hint of the sorrow that would consume him. We recognized his parents instantly. They were local legends, pillars of the community whose tragic downfall had shaken the town years ago. Sam's father, overwhelmed by business failures, had committed suicide. Sam, as a young boy, had believed he could have saved him, a burden of guilt he had carried ever since. The truth slammed into us with the force of a physical blow. Sam wasn't just hiding from the world. He was hiding from his past, from the crushing weight of a perceived failure that had defined his entire life. This Walmart wasn't just his sanctuary. It was a tomb for his memories, a place where he desperately tried to bury the haunting specter of his father's death. Jen knelt beside him, taking his cold hand. "Sam, you're not alone. We all carry our failures. That's why we're here, because we're afraid to face the world." Mario, his own past heavy on his mind, spoke of his stolen guitar, the dream that died before it had a chance to live. I confessed my catastrophic engineering blunder, the project that had cost me everything. We laid bare our own wounds, showing him that his pain, though unique, was mirrored in our own. But Sam remained unresponsive, shaking his head. "You don't understand," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "You can still go back. You can still face the outside. I can't. If I leave this store, their ghosts will follow me." We realized then the true depth of Sam's delusion. He was trapped not just by circumstance, but by the elaborate, self-made prison of his own mind. His failure had become a living entity, consuming him whole, Walmart for him was no longer just a place of refuge. It was the embodiment of his deepest regret. A chilling question hung heavy in the air, a new challenge for us all. Could we pull Sam back from the brink of his self-imposed oblivion? Or would his desperate surrender serve as a terrifying premonition of our own eventual fates? The weight of his burden, we now understood, was not just his alone. It was a reflection of the invisible chains that bound us all. Sam's confession had broken the dam, releasing a flood of uncomfortable truths. We stood there in the dim light of the warehouse, feeling the full weight of his despair. He wasn't just hiding. He was performing an act of ultimate surrender, giving himself over to the very thing he feared most. And in doing so, he held a terrifying mirror up to the three of us. "Sam," Jen pleaded, her voice thick with emotion. "You can't stay here. This isn't a safe place. It's an empty tomb." He shook his head, a hollow, vacant look in his eyes. "You don't understand. There's nothing for me out there. The outside world is where the ghosts are." I stepped forward. "Sam, your father's death wasn't your fault. It was a tragedy, not a failure." "It was my failure," he insisted, his voice rising in a tormented shriek. "I should have known. I should have seen it. I should have saved them." We could see it was a deep-seated delusion, a self-inflicted wound he had refused to let heal. We couldn't force him to leave. The weight of his guilt was a chain he had forged himself. With heavy hearts, we left him in the stillness of the warehouse, knowing that his path to freedom was one he had to walk alone. His story, however, left an indelible mark on us. The terror of his self-imposed prison became a living fear that haunted our every shift. We started seeing our own failures in the aisles. Jen saw her former student in every young face that came through her checkout line. Mario heard the sound of his lost guitar in the moaning of the industrial fans. And I saw my failed project in every misaligned shelf, in every misplaced item. We were all on the brink, our sanctuary slowly turning into a cage. One night, Mario broke the silence. "We can't do this anymore. We're becoming just like Sam. This place is a trap. We have to break free." Jen and I nodded in agreement. We knew he was right. We had traded one kind of prison for another, a life of fear and regret for the mundane comfort of a night shift. The time had come to face the outside world, no matter how terrifying. We decided to walk out together after our shift ended, a silent pact to reclaim our lives. But as we neared the main entrance, a familiar cold dread settled in. Mario stopped dead in his tracks. "I can't," he whispered, his face pale. "I'm not strong enough." "Me neither," Jen said, her voice shaking. We were all a breath away from turning back, from surrendering to the crushing weight of our pasts. The fear was a living thing, a whisper in the back of our minds telling us to stay, to remain safe and invisible. Suddenly, a strange, beautiful melody drifted from the back of the store. It was the sound of a guitar, a soulful, mournful tune that resonated with all of our hearts. We followed the music to the back of the warehouse, and there, sitting amidst the boxes, was Sam. He was holding a small, beat-up guitar, its strings vibrating with a heartbreakingly beautiful tune. It looked exactly like the one Mario had described. He looked at us and smiled, a genuine, heartbreaking smile that reached his eyes for the first time. "You're all afraid," he said, his voice clear and resonant. "But I'm free now." We were all stunned. Sam, who we had thought was lost forever, had found his freedom not in escaping his past, but in facing it. He had picked up his metaphorical guitar and played the song of his despair, and in doing so, had found a kind of peace we never thought possible. We didn't need to save Sam anymore. He had saved himself, and in doing so, he had shown us the way. We didn't need to run from our failures. We needed to confront them, to make them a part of our story, to play our own melancholic tunes. We walked out of Walmart together, the early morning sun casting long shadows behind us. The air felt different, the world outside no longer a place of fear, but a world of possibility. We had entered a sanctuary of failure and left with the courage to face a life of hope. The story ends here, but the journey continues. For every person who feels lost, who is hiding from their past, there is a chance to pick up the pieces, to face the darkness and find their own version of freedom. The invisible walls of the Walmart are only as strong as the fear that builds them. I, John, walked into Walmart, a crumpled, faded shopping list clutched in my hand. A familiar exhaustion clung to me, a heavy cloak woven from the long hours at the office and the late nights spent over spreadsheets. Going to Walmart at this hour had become a mindless, almost robotic ritual. My wife, Anna, would leave a small note on the counter before her own early shift. Get eggs, milk, and a new soccer ball for our son. This endless cycle was the only truth I knew, a life of relentless mechanical routine. The moment the automatic doors slid shut behind me, the air inside felt different, colder than it should have been. The bright fluorescent lights seemed to glow with an unnerving white intensity. The store, a bustling hive of activity during the day, was now a silent, sterile void. Only a few night shift employees drifted through the aisles like ghosts, their movements slow, their faces expressionless. It felt less like a store and more like a scene from a surreal, disquieting film. I glanced at my list again. Eggs, milk, a soccer ball. Get in, get out, and get home before the morning meeting. I made my way to the grocery section first. As I reached for a carton of eggs, my hand froze. Tucked away on the shelf behind the cartons was a small, faded photograph. My heart leaped into my throat. It was a picture of my son, Tommy, as a small boy, learning to ride his first bicycle. His face was a burst of pure, unadulterated joy, and I was holding onto the seat, my hand a silent, supportive presence. I remembered that day so clearly. I had taken the day off from work just for him. Looking at the photo, my mind was flooded with a warmth I hadn't felt in years. Tommy was a young man now, away at college. Those memories felt so distant. I picked up the photo. Why was it here? Behind the egg cartons? I shook my head, convinced it was just a trick of my tired mind. I put the photo back and looked at my list again. That's when I felt a jolt of pure dread. The word eggs had vanished. The space on the paper was completely blank, as if it had never been written there. A shiver ran down my spine. What was happening? I shook my head, trying to convince myself I was just seeing things. I hurried toward the dairy section, my heart pounding in my ears. I reached for a gallon of milk but stopped short. Lying on the shelf next to the milk was a small, worn-out teddy bear. It was Tommy's favorite. He never went anywhere without it when he was little. One day he lost it on the way home from school. He cried for 3 days straight, a pain I still remembered, because I had come home too late to comfort him. I picked up the teddy bear. Its soft fur held the faint, sweet scent of a long-lost childhood. I remembered all the missed moments, the times I chose a meeting over a game, a promotion over a hug. A wave of crushing regret washed over me. I placed the bear back on the shelf, my hands trembling. I looked down at my list, and my breath caught in my throat. The word milk was gone. Only soccer ball remained. I was no longer an ordinary shopper. I was a player in a horrifying game. For every lost memory I encountered, a piece of my list, a piece of my life, was being erased. A terrible fear took hold of me. If this kept happening, my list would be completely empty. And what would that mean? Would I lose everything I had left? Or worse, would I become a lost memory myself, trapped forever in this surreal, unending Walmart? The walls seemed to close in around me. I had to end this game, but I had no idea how. The store had me caught in its invisible web, my heart hammered in my chest. With only one item left on my list, soccer ball, a desperate urgency seized me. I had to find it and get out of this place before my last connection to the real world disappeared. I sprinted toward the toy section, my only goal to grab the ball and escape this surreal nightmare. I didn't care that my hands were shaking or that my breath was coming in ragged gasps. I just had to get out. The toy aisle was a sensory overload of bright colors and plastic cheer, but it brought me no comfort. Instead, the cheerful cacophony of a children's store felt like a mockery. I scanned the shelves frantically, but there was no soccer ball in sight. A cold panic began to set in. Was this it? Was this my final test, my ultimate failure? Then, in a corner, I spotted it, a vintage video game console. It was the original PlayStation, the one I had given Tommy for his 10th birthday. A rush of warm nostalgia washed over me. I remembered that day so vividly. I had spent the entire afternoon playing games with him, a rare occurrence given my grueling work schedule. It was one of the most precious moments of my life. He had looked up at me, his face alight with a joy I'd rarely seen, and said, "Dad, you're my best friend." But my mind immediately went to the ugly truth of that day. I had left early for an emergency meeting, a meeting that was just another step up the corporate ladder. I had chosen my career over my son. A single tear rolled down my cheek. I picked up the console, and its plastic felt heavy with the weight of my regret. That day had meant the world to Tommy, but to me it had been a footnote in my professional life. I placed it back on the shelf, my hands trembling uncontrollably. When I looked at my list, the last word, soccer ball, had vanished. The paper was completely blank. My heart stopped. I had lost everything. A profound emptiness washed over me, a feeling more terrifying than any panic. I was in a labyrinth of my own failures, a prisoner in a store that had devoured my past. I stumbled forward, my legs moving of their own accord, my mind numb. I walked from aisle to aisle, but nothing looked familiar. It was as if the very geometry of the store had changed, trapping me in an endless loop of forgotten memories. Suddenly, I heard a small boy's voice. "Dad, where are you?" My breath hitched. It was Tommy. I followed the sound, my heart pounding with a desperate hope. I found a small, dimly lit room. Inside, a young Tommy stood holding a small red toy car. It was the first toy car I had ever promised to buy him. He looked at me with a questioning smile. "Dad, why aren't you playing with me? Let's play together." My heart ached with a deep, searing regret. I had promised him that car, but I had forgotten all about it in the rush of a busy workday. I had broken his trust, a small betrayal in a lifetime of missed promises. I tried to reach out to him, but a transparent, invisible wall stood between us. I couldn't touch him. The image of his small face faded, leaving me alone in the small room. The empty list in my hand was a testament to the hollowness of my life. This Walmart wasn't just a place where memories were lost. It was a mirror reflecting my deepest regrets. And I was trapped within its glass walls, a prisoner of my own making. My hands, clutching the now empty list, felt as hollow as my soul. I wandered through the surreal aisles of Walmart, each step a descent into a deeper layer of my own personal hell. This wasn't a store anymore. It was a museum of my failures, a gallery of my regrets. The bright lights seemed to mock me, illuminating a life that was now utterly devoid of meaning. I found myself in the sporting goods section, staring at a single soccer ball. It sat there, a vibrant reminder of a promise I had broken to Tommy. I had promised him a new ball, a simple gift that would have meant the world to him, but a business trip had taken precedence. He had gone to bed that night with a look of quiet disappointment on his face, and I had left the next morning without ever giving it a second thought. Now, the ball sat on the shelf, an unspoken accusation. I reached for it, but the moment my fingers were about to touch it, it simply dissolved into thin air. A wave of crushing despair washed over me. This wasn't just about losing my list. It was about the consequences of my actions. Every one of my failures, every act of neglect, was being punished. The items I needed were disappearing, a symbolic reflection of the things I had let slip away in my life. I continued my aimless wandering, my feet carrying me to the electronics section. I saw my wife, Anna, standing there holding a small cake box. It was our anniversary cake. I had promised her a big party, a night out to celebrate our years together, but work had gotten in the way. I had come home late, tired and drained, and she had spent the evening alone, eating a single slice of cake. I had chosen a promotion over my wife, a career over my family. Anna smiled at me, but her eyes held a profound sadness. "Do you remember, John?" she whispered, her voice a ghost in the vast, empty store. "Do you remember all the times you were too busy?" I wanted to run to her, to hold her, to beg for her forgiveness. But I couldn't move. An invisible barrier separated us, a wall built from my own selfishness. She was there, but she was a million miles away. A beautiful, haunting memory I could no longer touch. A memory of my father's voice echoed in my head. "Son, a life isn't just about work," he had told me years ago. "It's about the people you love. If you neglect them, you'll find yourself with nothing." I had ignored his words, choosing the path of corporate success over the path of a loving husband and father. And now, in this surreal Walmart, I was living the consequences of that choice. I had all the success in the world, but it meant nothing. I had traded my family for a career, and now I was left with nothing but an empty list and a heart full of regret. I fell to my knees, the cold, sterile floor a cruel contrast to the fire of my anguish. The entire store seemed to shimmer, the lights flickering, the aisles stretching into infinity. I was trapped, a prisoner in a nightmare of my own making. My mind screamed for an end to this madness, but I knew the only way out was to confront the man who had brought me here. Myself. I had to face my failures and accept the punishment for them. Only then could I hope to find an exit from this terrifying, endless store. My hands, gripping the empty shopping list, felt like they were holding a physical representation of my life's emptiness. The surreal Walmart was a boundless expanse of my mistakes, and every aisle was a mirror reflecting my deep-seated regrets. My family, Tommy and Anna, were within sight, but they were beyond my reach, ghosts in my self-made purgatory. As I stood in that empty corridor, a profound sense of anguish washed over me. I finally understood the truth. All my years of work, the endless hours at the office, the relentless pursuit of success, they were all for my family. But I had become so consumed by the means that I had forgotten the purpose. I had chased a phantom of happiness, believing that money and success could buy the love and connection I was neglecting. The joke was on me. My life was now rich in accolades, but poor in everything that mattered. A flickering light drew my attention to a small, unassuming shelf. On it, a single old toy car sat waiting. It was the red toy car I had promised Tommy so many years ago. It sat there, a silent testament to a forgotten promise. A tear rolled down my cheek. I reached for it, and as my fingers closed around its cold, plastic shell, the store began to shake. The fluorescent lights above me flickered violently, and a disembodied voice boomed, "You have a choice, John. You can face your failures, or you can run from them forever." I knew what I had to do. I had to face my son, the boy I had failed to protect and nurture. I clutched the toy car tightly and turned to face him. He was standing there, a small, innocent boy, his eyes filled with a heartbreaking mix of hope and disappointment. "I'm sorry, Tommy," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "I should have been there for you." His small hand reached for mine. "I know, Dad," he said. "I love you anyway." His forgiveness was a lifeline in the sea of my regret. I looked at Anna, standing beside him, her face filled with love. "I'm sorry, Anna," I said. "I should have put you first. I should have made you a priority." She smiled, a beautiful, gentle smile that reached her eyes. "I know," she said. "I love you too." And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the world shifted. The flickering lights stabilized, the endless aisles shrunk back to their normal size, and the ghostly figures of my family faded. I was back in the produce section, lying on the cold, polished floor. The crumpled shopping list was in my hand, and it was no longer empty. Eggs, milk, and soccer ball were all there, their words a stark reminder of the reality I had almost lost. I stumbled to my feet, my body shaking but my mind clear. I grabbed a carton of eggs, a gallon of milk, and a brand new soccer ball. At the register I saw the cashier, her face no longer expressionless but filled with a quiet kindness. "Find everything okay?" she asked. I smiled, a genuine, heartfelt smile that reached my eyes. "Better than okay," I said. "I found everything I needed." As I stepped out of Walmart, the first rays of dawn were breaking over the horizon, painting the sky in a palette of oranges and pinks. I wasn't the same man who had walked into the store just hours before. The shopping list was now more than just a piece of paper. It was a testament to the life I had almost lost. I was no longer a prisoner of my own making, but a man who had been given a second chance. And this time, I wouldn't waste it.